is in. In its manifesto, Labour said the NHS estates are in a state of disrepair and that Labour is therefore committed to delivering the new hospitals programme. But we don't know the time frame. Let's talk more about this with the North West Norfolk MP James Wilde, who urged Wes Streeting to get on with the rebuild when he spoke in the Chamber on Tuesday. James, good morning. Thanks very much for joining us.
Good morning, Chris.
How are you feeling about it now? Are you convinced that the new QEH will be delivered by 2030, or are you having some concerns?
Well, during the election, Labour were unambiguous that they were committed to the new hospitals programme, including specifically the QEH. So to have a review announced is unwelcome news, which is going to bring further delay and uncertainty. But the one thing we know about the RAC hospitals is they have to be done by 2030. So the Health Secretary should be getting on with approving the business cases for that hospital rather than reviewing it and causing further delay into the programme.
It's interesting you use the term further delay. We've spoken about this a lot, haven't we, over the years? And I know at times you've been really frustrated by previous delays, even when it was your party in government.
Absolutely, yeah. I've been keen to get on with this. We know the timeline for the hospital. And at the moment, the QEH is continuing to spend millions of pounds making sure that the RAC in the hospital at the moment is safe. I think they've just been given another £20 million or so to do that for this year. That's a lot of money that's being spent, ultimately will be in a hospital that's going to be knocked down. So the sooner we can make progress on the new build, the better that will be for patients, staff and for the taxpayer.
We just played the clip with Wes Streeting. He did say that RAC hospitals like the Queen Elizabeth Hospital are top of his priority list. So that must give you some reassurance.
Yeah, it does give me some reassurance. I think we won the argument last year on RAC, and that's why QEH and the other 6 RAC hospitals were put at the front of the queue by the last Conservative government. So what I don't really understand is why Wes has come in and decided to look at that decision again when everyone knows that the RAC has to be done. There was an independent expert safety review report done, which demonstrated that 2030 was the latest that those hospitals could be open. So we all know that they've got to be done. So rather than reviewing it, I'd rather he'd approve the business case for the multi-storey car park, which is sat on his desk, which if that gets approved, then work can start later this year on that project, which then, when that's complete, frees up the space for the existing car park for work to start on the new hospital. So he's got a business case that he could approve and we could then make progress. I've urged him to do that. I wrote to him within the first couple of days of him coming into office, asking him to do that. And I hope that he'll get on with that and get this review done as soon as possible.
Isn't it fair to say, though, that one of the reasons that the review is being conducted is that what was being promised is not deliverable? All of these new hospitals or the rebuilds by 2030, realistically, wasn't actually realistic, is what Wes Streeting seems to be saying now.
Well, he has said that. I mean, when the plan was set out last year, a number of projects were moved to the right in terms of the time frame in which they were going to be built, because those ones weren't going to be realistic to be done in time. I'm only really focused on the QEH one. That's the one I'm familiar with in terms of the time frame, and ours has to be done by 2030. It's not an optional decision. If it's not done by 2030, then it's the expert advice is it's not safe for the building to continue to be used. So we need to just get that approved so we can move forward. The Trust have been working closely with the new hospitals programme team over the last year and beyond to get the project moving forward. And as I say, the next project is the multi-storey car park. That's ready to go and get procurement happening and then construction later this year. But that needs the Secretary of State to sign it off and to approve it. So that's what I hope that he'll do.
So from your point of view, here we are now in the second half of 2024. From your point of view, at this point, there is still time to get a hospital in place and rebuilt by 2030.
There is, but I think I've said before, we don't have time to waste. And I do think that this review, hopefully it will be done rapidly, but I think it creates further delay. He could have signed off the business case on his first day in office and then we'd be moving forward. At the moment, we now have to wait, I assume, and I hope that he'll do that review before we rise for the summer recess, but that's only on Tuesday. So whether he'll have done it then, I don't really want us to be waiting until we come back in September for him to have done the review when it's so obvious to everyone, having won the argument with the support of the local community, that our RAC hospital needed to be rebuilt by 2030 because the work needs to be getting underway on the car park in order that we can meet that 2030 timeline.
The new South West Norfolk MP, Terry Jeremy, has been telling us that the Norfolk MPs, the new intake of Norfolk MPs, because it changed a lot 3 weeks ago, are working together on these kinds of issues. Has it started in promising fashion, the new Norfolk group of MPs, in terms of working together despite coming from 5 different parties now?
Indeed, I think that health questions, there were a number of questions about dentistry from the new Labour MP for Norwich North, and George Freeman, my colleague in Mid-Norfolk. I sat down with Terry actually after those questions to talk precisely about QEH, and that we make the case together, and he has conversations with the Health Secretary as well to underline the importance of the project. He said that he'd already been doing that. So we need to work collaboratively to benefit our constituents and our county. And I'm already doing that with my new colleagues.
And then from a personal point of view, how different are you finding it? I know it's only 3 weeks in, but being in opposition and having to ask questions of a minister from a different party, because we know in the past you've been able to get various health secretaries, and that was a post that changed a lot over the last few years of the Conservative government, but you were able to have access to get them to come and visit places like the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. Is it a different experience being in opposition?
It is. It's frustrating being in opposition because you're not in charge of things. But the point and the reason I was able to ask the question in Parliament on Tuesday is because people recognise that I've been leading the charge on the hospital in Westminster. So I'll continue to do that, and the Health Secretary will continue to engage with me and with other colleagues. But I think where we've got new colleagues from the governing party as well, that they stood on a manifesto and a commitment to deliver on this. So they need to hold their own party feet to the fire to make sure that they do that and that they don't resile from that commitment. So as you say, Wes has said that RAC is a priority. I just hope that he'll get on and confirm absolutely that we can proceed and that we can get the next steps happening with the hospital.
So North West Norfolk MP James White.